Hello, 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 and welcome to today's episode of Her Version. This podcast is dedicated to sharing stories of struggle to triumph, a platform that allows individuals to tell their truth in order to inspire and uplift others. For those of you that are new to this podcast and like content like this, make sure you hit that subscribe button and make sure you follow, like, and share. I am your host, Sabrina Victoria. Let's jump right in. Thank you for joining us for this episode of Her Version. The Her Version platform is built on storytelling and the understanding that many times our greatest learning experiences come from listening to other people's stories. Today, I am speaking with an amazing woman named Leah Collins. Leah is a strong, beautiful woman who has gone through a whirlwind of challenges over the years. She is here to share her journey in order to inspire women all over the world about the tough decisions that are put in front of us and how we need to navigate through them. Leah called off her engagement 6 weeks before her wedding. She is killing it in the world of finance. She recently gave birth to a baby girl and is here to set us straight when it comes to what it means to be a responsible woman, what it means to communicate openly, and how calling off her wedding just might have been one of the best decisions she's ever made. Welcome, Leah. How are you?
I'm good. How are you? Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, thank you. I so appreciate you taking some time out of your day to sit down with me and share your journey. You and I actually connected real good on our first phone call, more than usual, not trying to take away from anybody else's phone calls because I connect with everybody. But you really hit a chord with me in some of these topics that we're going to be covering. So I'm low-key super greedy about today's podcast because I just want to pull from your journey and what you've been through and all the nuggets of information that you have that you are now opening up and sharing with people. I so appreciate females like you who take their story and not only learn from their story. We all want to be learning from our stories, but decide to teach with their story. So I think that's so cool.
Thank you.
Yes. So how has your Thursday been?
You know how my Thursday has been. It has been crazy and hectic. Nothing went as planned, but it's fine. I made it work.
We're here.
Yes.
We are here. Well, listen, I would love to kind of just hand the floor over to you. I don't know or remember kind of what came first, whether the engagement stuff came first or the financial stuff came first. I could guess, but I kind of want you to kind of just tell the story in the flow of this experience that you're opening up and you're starting to share with the world, and kind of tell us how this journey looked for you, and then we can kind of go in and figure out what you learned and all the things that you're teaching now.
Okay,
cool.
All right. Well, the financial journey came first. So back in 2017, I was looking at my tax returns and I saw how much money I had made. I think that was the first time, or maybe the second. I think it was the second time I had made well over six figures. And I had absolutely nothing to show for it. My savings was still low. My credit wasn't the best. It wasn't horrible, but it wasn't best. I didn't have any investments. It was terrible. So I decided at that point to do something about it. So I took a financial course. And within 18 months, I paid off $40,000 worth of debt. I purchased investment property and I increased my credit score to over 800.
Yes.
Thank you. And at that point, I decided to start a business to help other people do the same. So I did that for a few years. And then in 2019, I got engaged. And we had been off and on for a very long time, about 10 to 12 years. We got engaged. Things were going okay at first, but then there were red flags, right? There were signs. But at that point, we're engaged. I don't want to call anything off. He doesn't want to call anything off. Money's been spent on the ring, on the wedding. There's the social stigma around it. Like, it's embarrassing to call the wedding off. But 6 weeks before the wedding, enough was enough. And we called it off. And at that point, I decided I wanted to help other couples who are in similar situations with their finances. So we did take premarital counseling, right? But premarital counseling is when it comes to finances, is very, very high level. It's not usually very helpful. And one thing that I found is, as I was saying, a lot of times after you're engaged, it's kind of too late. It's not too late, but it's much harder to call it off. So I focus more so on people who are very serious and who are thinking about getting engaged, and I help them determine their financial compatibility and how to plan for their financial futures and try to set them up for success.
That's awesome. What an interesting thing to come out of all of this. So, not trying to pry or anything, you don't have to answer, but was, the circle or the cycle that I'm seeing around finances, was that one of the sort of kind of issues that you and your ex had?
Yes. Yes,
it was. So,
Yeah.
so this is something that you are taking from your personal experience and then actually keeping other couples from enduring a lifelong, right?
Right.
A
Right.
life-
Because, or maybe you don't know, but 1 in 2 marriages end in divorce. And the second leading cause of divorce is finances. So it's very important to try to get that right up front so that you increase your chances for success.
Wow. First is, I'm guessing, cheating.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow.
I don't know why I smiled when I said that. That's horrible. But yeah.
I hear you. Now, I'm assuming that once you kind of started talking about your story out, first of all, how long did it take you after all this to finally sit down and be like, you know what? I'm going to be freaking real and talk about this part of my life. How long did that take you?
It was about 1.5 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I kept hoping maybe we'd get back together. Maybe we work things out. And then once I realized that wasn't going to happen, I was just still embarrassed and I didn't want to talk about it. But then finally I decided, you know what? I'm going to turn my pain into power and help other women.
Yes, absolutely. And absolutely, because this is, well, obviously you just said the statistics, but I think that this is an issue that a lot of men and women,
Yes.
right? Men and women deal with, as far as linking up with the wrong person, because we're not necessarily getting down to the nitty gritty of the communication that we should be having pre-wedding.
Right.
I'm sure that there was a lot of people that were kind of like sliding into your DMs, asking questions.
Yes. And I was surprised at how many people could relate. I knew I'd have my fair share of women who could relate, but as you were saying, men and women, it impacts both of them. And I had a lot of men reaching out who were in similar situations, and called off their weddings or thought, okay, well, maybe I'm engaged now. Maybe I should call it off. Yeah, I was overwhelmed by the positive response and how many people could relate to what I was saying.
Yes.
Resonated with other people.
Yes, yes, yes. So as far as, we all know the basics, right? Why not to marry certain people. But we're kind of concentrating on, a certain kind, or kind of like a certain topic, which is kind of revolving around finances, kind of revolving around making sure that, what else? What else? What are the other couple of things that we should be kind of concentrating on first thing?
As far as finance, well, first of all, do you have a shared vision and goals? Do they align? That's very, very important. Also, what are your values, right? Another big thing is gender roles, or roles in general.
Yes.
Yeah, that was something that kind of came as a surprise to me because we operated a certain way while we were dating. But while married, he had more a more traditional idea of how a wife should be, which is fine if you both agree. But I mean,
yeah,
I agree to that. But so yeah, that's very, very important. Figure out who does what in the household. Kids is extremely important as well. First of all, do you want kids? How many kids do you want? If you're not able to have kids naturally, do you want to adopt kids? I know some people who have said if they can't have kids naturally, they just want to get a divorce. They want to walk away. I've seen people do that or say that. Religion is very important.
absolutely.
Yeah. Cultural differences. Especially now with more people marrying outside of their culture and outside of their race. Me and my fiance, I'm Black American. He was originally from Nigeria. There are a lot of similarities, but there are huge, huge differences.
Wow.
As well. Yeah.
Culturally, I'm assuming.
Right. So an example is Nigeria is a very collectivist society. Do you know what that is? It's more about the community, about the whole. There's a hierarchy there. Whereas the Americans are more individualistic, more self-sufficient. So an example with us would be maybe we'd have a disagreement and I want to work it out between the two of us, but he wants to call together the community, the moms, the aunties, things like that.
Wow.
It's fine, but there's potential for clash there if you don't, work that out and figure out how that's going to look in your relationship.
That can get uncomfortable because then people are kind of taking sides, possibly.
Yeah, and one thing I don't like about, again, it's okay sometimes, but your relatives and your friends, a lot of times you may forgive your spouse or your partner, but they don't. They don't forgive that.
Yes. That's one thing that I learned early on with just dating in general is to keep my mouth closed because sometimes you end up back with them more than once and then it's friggin' super awkward.
Yes.
So I'd like to kind of pull from you. Like I have my own answer for this, but you're dealing with so many clients in and around this arena now. I would love to kind of hear from you as far as I don't want to say excuses, but the excuses as to why we don't communicate about these things, why we are marrying people that we're not compatible with, and how do we avoid doing that?
People avoid it. It's just uncomfortable. And a lot of times there's shame involved. Maybe one person doesn't make as much as the other spouse, or they're scared that if one person does make more, and they want to bring up finances or bring up a prenup, they'll seem greedy, right?
Yeah.
Or maybe the other person who makes less, that they don't want to bring it up because they'll be seen as a gold digger. There's all kinds of reasons that it's taboo. But what was the second part of your question?
How do we avoid it? Like, how do we get past all these, what you're talking about, the blocks, and just say, F it. I'm going to just freaking say all the things. How do we do that?
Well, I think a one way to start is premarital counseling.
Okay.
Because one part of premarital counseling is communication, right? Which is a huge part. A lot of times you think the issue is money, but it's not. It's really communication or some underlying issue like ego or pride. So that's one thing. And just education. So for example, I told you that I have my premarital counseling program or coaching program that helps people initiate these discussions. Mm-hmm. So that's another good way as well. And there's also subtle ways to bring it up, right? Like I tell people that these conversations should come up early within the first few dates. And you can bring it up.
Wow. No.
There's subtle ways to do it. So I give this example sometimes. Say the person I'm on a date with is like, hey, what are you doing next weekend? Oh, I'm shopping for houses. I'm looking for an investment property. And then naturally the conversation is going to turn to the current state of real estate and the economy. And then you can kind of gauge where their money mindset is at that point. There's always way. Money always comes up whether we realize it or not.
Beautiful. What a sneaky way. That's a great way.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if they're completely clueless and they're, in their 40s.
Right.
So listen, while we're talking here, I'm just thinking to myself early on, average age to start like really seriously dating is young, like 18 years old. And I'm just thinking to myself, the awkwardness of having conversations like this, like I was so naive and stupid. I don't even know how this would even happen. So if we're talking to a woman, for instance, who's 23,
Mm-hmm.
how does she go about even speaking to her man about this when he's still working as a sales associate at Best Buy? Like, how does that even work?
Sorry, my computer's about to die. I had to plug up the cord. Okay. Again, like I said before, subtly.
Yeah.
You don't have to just go, hey, what's your credit score? You know?
Yeah.
You can say, hey, I'm taking. So what I did was I took a course. So maybe she can say something like, hey, I'm taking this course. What do you think? Or I'm reading a book, or I'm drowning in student loans. Like, this is what I'm thinking about doing to pay them off. There's always ways you can bring up the conversation.
As far as how much we change mentally, though, like I didn't know anything about any of this stuff when I was 23 or 24 years old. But now, if you ask me anything revolving, I got all my shit together. I'm like,
right.
So, like, I don't even, that's interesting. So, I guess, just depending on the age, the conversation will ebb and flow according to age appropriately.
Exactly. And like you said, a lot of it just depends on our experience. So had I got engaged when I was in college or 23 years old, that wouldn't have even been on my mind.
Yeah.
About money, to talk about prenups, to talk about gender role, like that. I think a lot of it just depends on like life and things that we've experienced as we, go through our journeys.
Absolutely.
Or what you've seen. A lot of people, they'll initiate the discussions because maybe they saw their parents go through a divorce and how their mother was devastated or their father was devastated financially. So really, a lot of it, I think, just depends on your experiences.
As far as, talking about finances, is there like two certain questions that we should be asking? Like, what should we be zoning in on? I mean, are we supposed to get down in nitty gritty as far as like how much money do you have in your account?
Yes. Like, depending on how serious you are. Now, the first date, no.
Not on date 4.
But if you're about to get engaged, yes, absolutely. You need to know that for sure. Because you're going to find out eventually when you get married anyway, hopefully.
Yeah.
But actually, there's an interesting statistic around that too. I believe I want to say 40% of spouses don't know what their other partner actually brings home and pay, which is problematic.
Wait, and they're like married?
Yes.
Wow.
That's how uncomfortable money discussions are.
Why is it so uncomfortable? I'm agreeing. Yeah. But why is it so uncomfortable?
I think it's just a cultural, societal thing.
Like it's a secret.
Yeah.
That's so interesting. Mm-hmm. As far as prenups go, what is your view on that? Are we all supposed to be getting prenups no matter what?
I am pro prenup. And a common misconception about prenups is that if you don't really have a lot of assets or you're not making a lot of money going into the marriage, you don't need a prenup. But that's not what a prenup is for. Whatever you have prior to the marriage, most of the time is already protected. That's considered separate property. Prenups are for marital property, assets that you all obtain during your marriage. So I think most people should get a prenup. I absolutely, if I do get engaged again or get married again, I will have a prenup.
As far as, so this is my past experience. My ex, I was in an abusive relationship and I had no money. He kept all the money for himself and had me working 14 hours a day. That's a whole nother story, but he wanted a prenup. And his excuse, I was already planning to leave. I already had a secret bank account. I already had secret online businesses rolling. I was making money. But, it took me 4 years. It took me 4 years to gain enough money to leave. And he had started talking about, we were with each other for, 13 years total. So towards the end, he started talking about marriage finally. And prenup came up. And
Mhm.
he insisted like the whole reason why I left was because he said the word prenup. Well, I mean, I had already been saving for 2 years and already had like, a plan in place. But it is scary and it is uncomfortable. And I did think about it, as far as if it was a healthy relationship.
Right.
If I was in that situation, a healthy one, and I had
Mhm.
that much stuff, I would probably want a prenup.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, why isn't it more? It would just be easier if they just made it a thing where you had to get a prenup. Then it wouldn't be so
Right.
uncomfortable.
And really, there is a prenup. So even if you and your partner don't come up with your own prenup on your own, right?
Okay.
The state is going to decide for you. So by default, there is a prenup. A judge of the state is going to decide what happens. So it's so much better, in my opinion, to do it up front when you all like each other, when you're in love, when you're more likely to be fair, to do the prenup then. Because once you're about to get a divorce, most of the time you're not divorcing that person you're married. That person has changed. And it's just easier to do it up front than at the end where emotions are involved, in my opinion.
Yes, 100%. So what
And
were a
it
couple of
oh, I'm sorry. Mhm.
No, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, not specifically your situation, but a lot of women benefit from prenups in various ways, right? So a prenup, you can have it say pretty much whatever you want to for the most part. So say one set of clientele that I have that's usually devastated by divorce is stay-at-home moms. A lot of times men feel like, well, I did all the work, I paid the bills, all she did was stay at home and raise the kids. Why should she get anything? She didn't make any money. But in a prenup, a lot of times what you can do is you can say, for every year I stayed at home and I didn't work and I supported your goals and dreams and sacrificed my own, I want X amount of money for every year.
Beautiful.
That's another good reason to have a prenup.
Yeah, beautiful. That makes sense. I totally appreciate that. And then as far as the negotiability of, obviously it's negotiable, right? So
Right.
he sits down with you or she sits down with you and says, hey, I'm thinking about doing this thing. It's a conversation.
Yes.
Like, it's not like the person with the money makes all the rules. You can negotiate and say, hey, I think that it'd be worthy for me to get this much
Right.
versus that much, or to get this vehicle or this house or whatever it is.
Yep.
So it's a negotiation,
Exactly.
just right off the bat.
Yes.
And I think that females, whoever is the lesser of the two, should welcome it with open arms, because in that state of like what you're saying, happiness, the person is more than likely more happy to negotiate with you.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yes. Exactly.
That just made me feel way better.
Good.
Hopefully it did for those listening. Yeah, it shouldn't really have to be scary. I agree with you. And while we're talking about this, I actually do remember, I didn't ever read it because I didn't really care. He actually made 2. So like there was 2 different ones that he made. I don't know.
Your
ex, yeah.
Okay.
But I remember him saying out loud, I never even remotely glanced at him because I didn't care. I was leaving. But I remember him saying out loud that in one of them, he was going to give me one of the townhouses that we had purchased, like out of state or something, was like going to be mine. So stuff like that, like you can, different assets and stuff can go to certain people. How does that work as far as updating it as more and more stuff is being added? You're with somebody for 20 years and do you just update it?
So you can get a postnup. Have you heard of postnups? It's basically a prenup after you're married.
Okay.
But
Ooh, that sounds awkward.
Yeah, exactly. I wouldn't advise that, because if my spouse comes to me after we're married wanting a postnup or wanting to update a prenup, like,
he's thinking about divorcing your ass.
So he's probably about to walk out the door. You need to be having another conversation at that point.
Oh my gosh, that's crazy. Out of the journey that you've been up to this point, what do you think is the number one lesson you've learned about life?
Gosh. I don't know if it's number one, but it's definitely one of the most important, is to try your best to be financially independent, because it gives you so much power and freedom to walk away from situations that aren't serving you. Like walking away from a relationship 6 weeks before you're supposed to get married,
Yeah.
or I have a daughter now, so after we called off the engagement, we found out I was pregnant shortly thereafter. But a lot of women in my situation would have tried to stay and would have tried to work it out, but I was able to leave and comfortably take care of my daughter. And that doesn't just relate to relationships, but also maybe a job that you're not liking, right? Where you're being mistreated. Being financially independent gives you opportunities and the freedom to just walk away.
What's your viewpoint as far as joint accounts?
So for me personally, every person, every situation is different.
That's why I said, what's your take
okay. I would want to do a combination of both. So I want my own separate account. He can have his own separate account. I would want everything that I've accumulated prior to the marriage, that should be mine, that should be in my account, and that should be in his. When it comes to joint expenses, like the mortgage and cars and things like that, I believe those should be in a joint account. You can just pay for those expenses out of the joint account.
Beautiful. And groceries, all that stuff.
Right.
And then as far as, again, in your opinion, if you're married, what would you do if husband wants to drop a few $1,000s on a brand new couch and entertainment center, and you weren't really down with that right now? How would that work?
He can take that out of his money in a separate account and purchase it.
Do you get to sit on that couch?
Yeah. I mean, of course, we would discuss it first. Like, we would have a conversation about it. Yeah. But if we absolutely couldn't agree, that's one of the great things about just having your own money. You don't have to sit there and discuss every single thing or every single purchase with your partner. That's part of the point of having your own accounts.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. And then as far as, the reason that I ended up in the situation I was in was because he handled all the money and he handled my paycheck. Oh. So, he decided that my 14 hours a day was 7 days a week was worth $250 a week, for real. So, and then I had to pay for all the groceries and had to pay for my gas and my phone bill and everything that was mine. So I was living paycheck to paycheck in like $1 million house, driving around a brand new white BMW fully loaded, and shopping at Aldi's and thrift stores because I literally had no money in my account. It was crazy. But as far as not ever ending up in a situation like that would be obviously to have your own money. Right.
It's so important.
And so this is a thing. I have talked to people about this because this is my story. Mm-hmm. And, the whole thing with the joint account, I've had, I don't want to say gotten in arguments because they weren't really arguments, but very passionate conversations with individuals, not necessarily boyfriends, but just individuals about the joint account and how it is seen as like not being a team if you don't put all your money into one account on either end, because he's making more and she should have access to it, or she's making more and he should have access to it. How do you debate that as far as it being a team if you want your own money?
So they're against having separate accounts, period?
Yeah.
Oh gosh.
That's like a real thing. There's people like that are around. Right. They want, if you are in this,
right?
No, are in this and you are fully committed, men and women, I've had this conversation with, then we should have both of our monies together, 100%, no secrets. Right. But then that puts an individual like me in a very tough spot.
Right. No, I understand. I have this conversation with people all the time. And usually those people haven't been devastated by divorce or financial abuse. And once they have, I'm pretty sure they would change their tone.
Good point.
Yeah.
Good point. Is that a good reason, if it doesn't feel authentic to you, Is that a good enough reason to walk away? I feel like it is. What's your opinion?
To walk away from a marriage?
Yeah, no,
Like,
no, because we're having this conversation pre-marriage because we're
all
doing
right.
what Leah
I
said.
think pre-marriage, any reason is a good reason to walk away. You're not taking any vows. You don't really even need a reason. Now, when you're married, yeah, you need to, try to work things out, have a conversation, put some effort in. But if you're not married to that person, you can leave.
If it's not feeling good.
Right. Trust your gut. That when your question about what was the question you asked me? The number one tip. That was my second one. I was gonna say trust your gut. It was between trust your gut or be financially independent. If things don't feel right, they probably aren't. Walk away.
Exactly. And I think that's the biggest thing for all of you listening right now. Thank you so much for the support and the love. I appreciate you being here. But I think that is the number one thing, is trusting your gut, because we get these feelings and we know, and, we wind up kicking ourselves later.
Yes.
Because we didn't listen to those things.
Yes.
So yep. I totally agree with that. What do you think is one of the things that females, in your opinion, that females misunderstand the most about finances?
I would say, I think we already touched on it.
I feel like females in general are very naive when it comes to money. And it really pisses me off.
That's what I was trying to figure out how to say that. Yes, you are right. So right now I mostly help couples, right, who are considering getting engaged or getting married. And I was thinking about also offering a service, kind of I haven't fully thought it out, but kind of being an advocate for one of the people in the relationship. So for an example, when I was engaged, I had a lot of questions about how to protect myself prior to marriage, or how things would work in the marriage. So for example, a question was, will his credit score affect my credit? Or should I get a prenup? How do prenups work? Or will his debt prior to being married, will I inherit that debt? There were questions like that. And I had no one to ask. I actually reached out to, do you know who Susie Orman is?
Yes.
Yes. I actually reached out to her.
Yes. She helped me. She was one of the people that saved me. Her and David Ramsey.
Yes.
Saved my life. Yeah.
Right. I took Dave Ramsey's course. That's how I got out of debt.
Yes.
But yes, so I reached out to Susie Orman. I didn't think she would respond. I sent her an email asking her all these questions about finances, how they would work in marriage, how to protect myself. And she responded. Each question, she gave me a response. And she was like, I think you may want to live with this guy and see how this works, because it seems like you have a lot of issues, and it sounds like you already know what you need to do.
Wow.
But maybe you should live with him and just see how it works before you actually get married to this guy. And she was right. But to your point, I would like to be that person that people can come to, men or women. And it was funny, when I started pitching the idea to people, I thought women would be like, oh, yes, that's great. I love that. No, it was men. Hands down, almost every single person was like, sign me up for that now. Sign me up for that now, was a man. Because women are more like, oh, well, that's not romantic. Or if we get a divorce, like he won't do that to me. Men, what I would say about men, they will position themselves to win. They will protect themselves.
Yes.
And their money. So yeah,
Why don't we though? What is wrong with us?
I think because society just teaches us to be the nurturers, to just kind of trust the men, like just struggle, be strong, you'll get over it. And we're just not, I think we just don't feel as empowered as men do.
Wow, look at that.
Yeah.
I never would have guessed that.
Me either.
Thought that, especially in today's day and age, I would have thought that they would have a woman would appreciate a little side nudge from another female with a little helping hand.
Yeah, no, it was the opposite. I was met with a lot of hostility, but men, they were like, yes, absolutely.
No shit.
Mm-hmm.
That's crazy to me, but also to what we were talking about. Mm-hmm. There it is right there, the very naive and not wanting to talk about it. that there stems the problem. And I think what you're saying, and you may or may not be dealing predominantly with couples who are first marriage, maybe these women have never been scorned before, so they don't know.
Right. But even still, there are a few that have been scorned and they did the same thing.
They didn't reach out.
Yeah.
That's so interesting to me. Wow.
Yeah.
Well, right there lays the foundation as to why we end up where we end up. So it's kind of our own doing. I did the same exact thing. I'm blaming it on the fact that I was so young. I started with him when I was 22-ish. I had no idea what the frick I was doing. He was 32. So he had double the amount of knowledge and just used that to his advantage. And I'm just sitting here, Miss Naive, Susie Q over here, thinking everything's all sun and rainbows, and getting screwed. Really screwed real bad. I'd like to hear what one of your most, because there's a drastic viewpoint change there between who you were and who you are. So can you give us an example of maybe one of the most disempowering beliefs that you had early on, and then what you believe now?
Okay. I think one of the most disempowering beliefs was avoid failure at all costs. And I told you that me and my ex-fiance, we have been together for 10 or 12 years. And I was just making sure he was the perfect one. He checked off everything on my checklist, and I have to do things this way and that way, and then everything will work out. That did not happen. With all that planning, everything still fell apart. Like, I wasn't going to be a single mom. I was going to have this husband, and we're going to have like 4 kids, and all of that planning, it did not work out. But what I learned is you just have to live life, and you learn from your failures. That's your failures. They're really not failures, but you learn from them, and then you pivot. And that's what I did. Like I said earlier, I turned my pain into power, and now I'm empowering other women and men to not make the same mistakes.
Exactly 100%. As far as you really grasping a hold of your money management earlier on, what made you do that? What happened?
Like I said, I was looking at my tax returns, and I just couldn't believe I made that much money and had nothing to show for it. And I just knew something had to change. I was spending my money on brunches. It was mostly food. I'm a foodie. I love to eat.
Same.
I was doing DoorDash, like breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I was living in DC, and brunch is a huge thing. So I would spend like hundreds of dollars on brunch every single weekend.
Wow.
Yeah. And so finally I was just like, something has to change. I have to do something about it. So I took Dave Ramsey's course.
Yes.
And it completely changed my money mindset and the way I view money and financial independence in general. And ever since then, I've just been on this financial freedom journey.
That is so cool. Is there a part in his course, or did you just on your own like go back through your financial statements to see where you were spending the money, to see like, oh my gosh, I'm buying Eggs Benedict too many times or something?
I didn't go back, but what I was doing was going forward. I was looking at and tracking my spending. And that's when I realized, oh my gosh.
Wow.
Out of control.
Wow. That's so cool. And it's such an easy thing to do and to change that behavior quickly if you want to.
Right.
It's awesome. And that's such an easy way for an individual, females, because we're talking to females, to be able to really start making some progress in their finances, just in general. So I'm going to ask, we're talking about relationships here. What do you do when you're kind of, in your opinion, what do you do if you're kind of drowning in some financial debt type atmospheres, and you as a person, male or female, is looking to get out, take Dave Ramsey's course, and then the other person isn't down with that?
Are you married or are you not married?
We're married.
Okay. So one of the things I recommend first is going back to your shared vision and goals. And usually they align. Like most people want to be financially free, right? Most people want peace. Most people want that freedom to spend time with their kids. So you start there. What are our goals? And then it's, okay, how do we get there? Can we get there doing what we're doing? And usually the answer is no, right? Yeah. Second, look at the data. What is the data telling you? Look at where you've been, where you're trying to go. Are you going to be able to get there? And then 3, just knowing your why. It's back to, so one of my whys now is my daughter, right? Like I want to work as hard as I can. So by the time she turns 5, she's 1. I want to be to the point where I don't have to work if I don't want to. If I want to wake up and take my daughter to the zoo or go to Disney World, like we can do that. So go back to your why. And that's a great way to start the conversation. Is just focusing on your goals and your vision for you and your family.
Absolutely. I totally agree with that. And bringing your spouse kind of full circle. Right. And reminding him or her, I think I agree with that 100%. That's great. So listen, for everyone that's sitting here listening right now, they're obviously fully engaged in what we're talking about. Tell us what you do, your business, how you help the humans. How do you help all the humans?
Okay, well, initially I just helped everyone on their journey to financial freedom. So that was debt, credit, savings, investing. But after what I experienced with calling off my engagement, I decided I wanted to help people. I help people who are married. I specifically want to help people who are engaged or are about to get engaged. And I want to help them determine if they're financially compatible, if their values align. I want to help them or tell them what topics need to be discussed, right? What do they need to cover prior to getting married? And I give them the tools that they need to succeed financially in their marriage.
That's awesome. Absolutely. So cool. And I love the fact that you are advocating for whoever's open to it.
Yes.
I think that is so important. One of the misconceptions with the podcast here is we're, go females and, let's hit the males over the head. But that's not what this is. I'm very aware that this can go either way. And, the issues a lot of times that come up here are issues that can be on either side of the pendulum. So I think that is so awesome. As far as your clients go and you feeling good as far as having a success in your clients, how do you define that? When you're sitting down with your with somebody that you're working with and you're coming up with a vision as far as where you want them to be, what is your ultimate goal? What are you trying to do for them to make them successful?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, you were breaking up a little bit. Can you repeat the question?
No, that's fine. I was just wondering, as a coach,
okay,
where do you feel the line sits as far as your client being successful? Where are you trying to get them? What do you deem as success for your client?
Okay. So it depends on which clients we're talking about. For my previous niche where I was just working with anyone, we, at the beginning of the program, we set goals, right? So maybe the goal is I want to pay off $10,000 of student loan debt this year. So we set those goals and then we measure those goals. And even if they don't achieve those goals that year or in that time frame, are you better than you were before, right? Like, are you making progress each day or each month, each week? But ultimately, how we try to define success is, did you meet those goals that we set out in the beginning of the program? And the same thing with the clients I have now, actually. It's the same. Have you achieved your goals? Have you determined if you and your partner are financially compatible? A lot of people see it as a failure if they decide to walk away from their engagement. And that's not a failure. You just prevented so much pain and suffering for you and your future children. It's absolutely not a failure.
Yeah, I agree with that. I was just going to ask something and now I forgot. Oh, it was really good. I don't remember. Um, I want to ask some advice though, as far as, we still have quite a few people listening here. They're obviously resonating with what you're saying. I'm assuming that they're all female. So what's
I'm
your
sorry,
advice?
it's because my computer is doing something weird.
Oh, is it?
I don't know what.
Well,
Yeah,
should I
it's
try maybe
kind of
putting on my
choppy, but I
headphones?
can hear you now. I can hear
Okay.
you now.
Okay. So, what would be some advice that you would give to a female who's about to walk down the aisle with a person who does not match them financially? Do they postpone and like work it out, call it off, break up? Do you navigate like with what you're thinking? Do you put it on them? How does this work? What would be
I
your
would
advice?
I would definitely say if you're second guessing your decision, definitely postpone it. You don't have to call it off. You can postpone it. Talk about the areas where you don't align, try to work it out, go to counseling. And then from there, if you still can't, come to some kind of agreement, if you're still not on accord, then yeah, you should probably call it off.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. This was awesome. Can you hear me?
Yes, kind of.
I feel bad. I feel bad. So right above right below your name is your Instagram.
Yes.
So anybody who is looking to link up with Leah Collins, make sure you follow her on Insta. Do you have a website?
I do. It's leahmariecollins.com. And if you want, you can go to
Beautiful.
my website. You can go to my website and take my couples financial compatibility quiz and see where you all don't align and then try to work on those areas.
Beautiful, beautiful. Well, listen, I could hear you perfectly the whole time, so that's all that matters because
Okay,
you're the
good.
one that's sharing all the goodies. But I'm going to close up a little early,
Okay.
just because if you can't hear me, it's kind of worthless to have a conversation. But I want to thank everyone for hanging out with us today. Those of you that are watching live still, we so appreciate the support. For those of you that are watching on the replay, make sure you hashtag replay so that we know that you are here and listening in. Thank you so much for joining us here on Her Version. This community is expanding every single day and is filled with females who are striving to do better than they did yesterday. For those of you that are new to this podcast and like content like this, make sure you subscribe. Be sure to reach out to me here if you have a story to share. My name is Sabrina Victoria, and I am your host. And I want to say, do something awesome, and we'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.